Nobody wants to do maintenance. Nobody wants to pay for maintenance.
Right.
The amount of warehouses that exist with the hero running around and, a 1-2 person maintenance team. But to really keep a solution and a complex solution running, like TGW provide, it takes huge amount of effort, huge amounts of control and huge amounts of quality.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our podcast, The Automation Journey. I'm Marissa Dierlam, Head of Marketing for TGW North America, and your host for today. I'm joined by two colleagues of our LTS team, Lifetime Services team. We want to talk about some of the key considerations before and after go live as it relates to maintenance. Can you guys please introduce yourselves before we dive into the topic?
This is Mike Elliott. He's my boss. He's been with the company for a long time. I have a great time working with him.
Wow. And this is Jared Cole, and he's been with us for about 18 months, but don't let that put you off. He's been in this industry for 15 years, and he's part of our business development team.
Awesome. Well, thank you, guys. I really want to center our conversation all around different maintenance considerations kind of throughout their journey from start to forever, I guess. So after contracts are signed, I think it's natural to get really excited for our customers to get excited and start circling that go live date, and they're thinking about that. But you guys have to think about things more holistically, right? You're thinking about before, after. So Mike, in broad strokes, can you explain what LTS is and does?
Yeah, so Lifetime Services is the after-sales part of TGW. So we range from anything from your simple spare parts right the way up to, full on-site service where we live on your site as a resident team. In between that, we can send field service engineers. We have training and development, and then we also have our own continuous improvement team that helps develop ourselves and helps develop the customer in their maintenance teams as well. So we're a Swiss Army knife, so to speak, in terms of after sales. There's a lot of moving components, but we're there really to benefit the customer. It's all for the customer. And what we do is, what we say in the title, lifetime. We're there for the lifetime of the installation, the lifetime for the customer, as long as they want us.
So let's maybe walk through that whole kind of journey for a typical customer related to maintenance. How soon are you guys already talking to them about what LTS offerings might make sense for them? Is it before the automation solution is even in place?
9 times out of 10, yes, it is. Usually within the sales process of a large or medium-sized installation, we're already talking to the customer as a whole sales package with the main sales team. And we present our solutions and what we think. It's a big decision, along with the CapEx cost, you've also got to think of the OpEx cost that goes with that. Nobody wants to do maintenance. Nobody wants to pay for maintenance.
Right.
The amount of warehouses that exist with the hero running around and, a 1-2 person maintenance team. But to really keep a solution and a complex solution running, like TGW provide, it takes huge amount of effort, huge amounts of control and huge amounts of quality. There's advantages, and how to sell that is very difficult. And I don't just mean sell it from a monetary value. I mean sell the goal and the mission to the customer of how to keep your system running with maximum uptime, maximum availability, and at a competitive cost that doesn't impact their budgets too much.
So then how are you guys consulting them on what makes sense? Is it based on the size and scope of the solution that they have in mind? Are there other factors that you're advising them on?
I think to some degree it depends on the expertise that they already have. It's pretty rare, I think, for an automated warehouse to not already have a good amount of expertise, but that doesn't mean that expertise applies perfectly to the new equipment that you haven't run before.
Sure.
And with any complex solution, the more complex it is, the more opportunity there is for one thing to affect something further down the line. And the expertise that TGW Lifetime Services provides, especially with the onsite teams, is really, really valuable. Again, especially when you have a complex solution. Not all solutions are really complex, but the more throughput your warehouse requires, the more complex a solution may be, and the more valuable that on-site team is going to be.
Nice. So then once installation and commissioning are already starting, how soon is LTS showing up on site, and what do those first interactions, first days look like for an LTS team?
So we work in partnership with our realization teams. Sometimes we deploy our lifetime services teams into the realization teams so that they could pick up the system knowledge and learn it, and then transfer over that to us as we build our team. And then at the same time, sometimes, timeline, probably 6 to 8 months. It's very difficult because labor's expensive. So how much do we want to pay? How much preliminary time do we want on the site? And then sometimes, we've started up a site in 4 weeks. Okay, so we've deployed a site team for one of our customers in 4 weeks. And we were able to get uptime and availability very quickly after that, within 6 weeks, because of some of the systems that we use and some of the methodologies that we use. Whereas other sites, some of the bigger sites, we've taken 6 to 8 months to develop the team. And the development goes on. But working with realization is incredibly important, especially when complexity of a system, software, controls, how we learn all that. And it's not just on-site services. We also have a remote support service team that also has to learn the site.
Sure.
Equipment is equipment, standardization across the network. But every site has its intricacies. Every site has its own little quirks, and it's learning those, and that's what makes it important.
And then how much are you guys involved in like the change management for the actual customer too? Like, how much are you guys training them and getting them up to speed and getting, the relationships built?
From there on out, there's accountability. So it's very clear that we have something called a beneficial use date, and that's what the customer agrees to. And in that beneficial use date, any changes that want to be made to the system during that, accountability sits with the realization department, with us involved, and we're aware of everything that's going on. Once that beneficial use date comes, the system now belongs to the customer. Beneficial use.
Yeah.
And now that accountability for change control sits with lifetime services. And it's very simple. Change control can come from mainly two things. Was it originally spec'd in the system? Is this what you asked for? And if it isn't, and your business model has changed, let's talk about how we change the system and how it operates, whether it be a piece of conveyor, a piece of controls, or a piece of software, to let the system do what you want. And is that possible? And then obviously every system needs bedding in time. Every system needs that, I call it a year's period of working through issues and bugs. And then we need to determine, okay, you did ask for that, and we can see a problem. Because it's a complex system.
Right.
We try our best to do right first time, but when these things go live, we really have to pinpoint where the problems lie. And it's all about, again, the accountability piece to ensure that we fix those issues as quickly as can under a very similar change control process as if there would be a change to the functional design specification.
Yeah, makes sense.
If I can follow up on that. So Mike, what's your experience, since every solution is custom for that customer's individual needs, how often is it that the original design spec has no changes to scope, no changes to functionality during the realization process? It seems to me that as the customer becomes more familiar with the solution, they would say, oh, we thought we needed X, but what we really need is Y. And that's an important part of the change control process, to recognize who's responsible for the change. Is the change something that should be free and baked in? Is the change something that should be paid for? But more importantly, do all of the people affected by the change, have they weighed into the change so that we don't change something and then it makes half the people happy and half the people miserable?
Yeah.
Changes come in all shapes and sizes. An example would be, we had one customer that wanted our software to be displayed on the visual screens in a completely different language that we didn't use at all. So it was up to us, the software team, and we worked with the global translation team to ensure that we could display our screens in a different language, because they didn't expect that the local workforce will be speaking a specific language. But the smaller the system, the minor the change. We've deployed systems where they've been good from day one, and they've never needed to make changes. If it has, it's been very minor, and we just do it. Just get it done.
Right.
Let's make the change. Let's move on. Whereas the more bigger, complex systems, there has to be process and change control in play, and it's a constant conversation. It never stops. The conversation is always ongoing, whether it be weekly, monthly, quarterly. We talk about those changes, and we plan and implement them. And from a lifetime services provider, you know, again, we work with the realization department that was initially looking after and built the site, and they deploy the changes. So we gain the feedback of what the customer needs and wants, and then we deploy that feedback into software who can then come up with a creative solution to help solve the problem. The special thing about TGW is we're not out the box, okay? Our equipment is out the box, you know, our code is out the box, but we can very much tailor our equipment to what the customer needs and demands.
So in general, is there anything that you guys are thinking about before the beneficial use, before go live, anything that you're already doing before go live to make sure that after go live goes well?
I would like to say we probably have a 500-point checklist.
Nice.
You know, in Microsoft projects that helps us how to deploy an LTS team. This all starts, though, in the beginning conversations, like we said in the previous few answers. We start at the sales conversation, getting to know the customer, getting to know what they need, what they want. And then by the time we've come up to, yes, we want TGW Lifetime Services to do it, we literally have the cord to pull. And as soon as we pull it, we trigger all the actions straight away. And depending on the timing, it can be a huge amount of work in a very small period of time, or it can be spread over a longer period of time. As I said, we deployed a site team in 4 weeks, but we've also deployed site teams in 6 to 8 months, especially with the bigger installations. So it's very important for us to get to know the project team, not on the shop floor, but on a management level. It's very important for us to know the software manager and the project manager and the controls manager for those projects, so that we can work in tandem to see how our resources can work together to give the customer the best result. Sometimes it's not perfect. Sometimes there's trouble and, you know, and we're deploying a difficult, large installation or even some of the smaller installations. But it's all about teamwork, communication, working together. And even in the design reviews, like, whoa, you can't put that conveyor there. Well, why not? Well, I can't reach it. You know, how am I going to maintain it? Actually, you're going to need a $50,000 piece of equipment to access that piece of equipment. And that cost lies with either the customer or TGW.
Or to crawl underneath a conveyor that's 6 inches off the floor.
Or to crawl under a conveyor that's 6 inches off the floor. So the constant feedback that we work between Lifetime Services and realization and the design teams, it all provides continuous improvement over the lifetime of us developing solutions. There's always something to change. There's always something to improve. And the constant learning that we do as a company is pretty brilliant in my eyes.
So let's talk about next what happens when kind of the keys to the Mercedes, the kid's handed off to the customer. What is the LTS team doing on a regular basis to ensure success and lifetime value for the customer?
Well, the LTS team doesn't start then. They've already started. When you're handed the keys to the Mercedes, as you said, you already have some expectations about how that Mercedes is supposed to work, about what's supposed to happen when you put the key in, what's supposed to happen when you push the different buttons. And so the Lifetime Services team has to have that set of expectations. Remember, these are all custom systems for that business's custom needs. And yet the training that a lot of the staff has had before they arrive at that site is not yet customized to that site. So we need to be there ahead of time before go live to make sure that no matter what happens, we're ready to go and that we're speaking the same language. When someone talks about the decant area, that might not mean the same thing at site A versus site B. So we all need to be speaking the same language, have the same set of expectations, and know how to achieve a very rapid correction if something goes wrong and not be figuring it out for the first time on day one. We need to know the system inside and out. And so we make sure that the site team is very well trained, that the remote team is very well trained. and that even though the site is now live and it's been turned over, so to speak, to LTS, that doesn't mean that the realization team now ignores all questions, that they're not still plugged in. As Mike said before, we're still one TGW team. The site didn't buy the solution from LTS. They bought the solution from TGW.
Yeah.
And we're a whole TGW that all comes together to make sure that the customer has the best experience possible.
So then, Mike, what's kind of like a day in the life for an on-site team?
I'm just going to go back to your key. You get the keys to your new vehicle question.
You like that?
Because you get a brand new car, they give you the keys and they say, okay, there you go. But come back in 500 miles for your first oil change. And that's exactly what we need to do. Once we get the keys, we need to perform one round of maintenance on the whole system. That system has been through a very technical, long period of running and testing, and guys have been tweaking and making changes, and it's all been finessed. Now we need to go around and check all the nuts, the bolts, the belts, the pulleys, the lift belts, the shuttles, one round of maintenance straight away. And then behind that, obviously we need to ensure that all our maintenance plans are in place, so for long term. And then training's been deployed and complete. The next thing, or the first thing that we start very, very quickly, is our top loss. So we manage our top loss as a whole team. We meet once a week. Each installation meets once a week, and they discuss the top 3 issues that they're having with some of our more technical experts, and they coach and train our teams through some of these issues. So it's a learning experience that stays on site, because someone else is not coming to fix your problem. The site team are fixing the problem because they are very capable through coaching and training. And at the same time, as I said, the system needs to bed in. There's going to be nuisance faults or slight tweaks or slight modifications, or belts are going to have tracked off. So we need to make those finer tweaks. And it's through our top loss system that really helps fine tune the site into that lean, mean running machine that the customer wants during their most important moments.
So then how often are you guys doing kind of that regular proactive maintenance? And is it different for hardware versus software?
Every day. So one thing that you'll see when you walk around a TGW installation, some of the newer ones, we now have a QR code that's manufactured, that's deployed at manufacture of the equipment. Previously, we applied them ourselves, but through continuous improvement within TGW, we don't have to apply those QR codes ourselves because we do them at manufacture. And that gives us access to the information for that whole piece of equipment. And what we do is we map the system. So very simply, we break it down. How do you eat an elephant? Not with a knife and fork, Jared.
With barbecue sauce.
With barbecue sauce, but in bite-sized chunks. And that's what we do with the installation. And we make it easily walkable routes, and they're color-coded. And then the technician or the engineer, he has or she has a piece of paper or on their tablet with the CMMS, however way they want to work. They print off the work order, or they take it on their tablet, and they perform. It's pretty much 10 checks or 10 or 15 checks that they do, and they do this on every piece of equipment. And if they see something wrong and they can't fix it within 5 minutes, because they carry the little toolkit, if they can't fix it within 5 minutes, they create a work order, and then we start building up maintenance history, maintenance jobs, maintenance work, and it's going to peak and it's going to rise, and it probably like a bell curve at first, and then you start getting into standardized maintenance, which we then deploy our maintenance plan at the same time, which building a brand new maintenance plan for a large or medium-sized system is quite complex. All that equipment, when do you plan it in? What are the intervals? Some of our equipment sits on usage-based maintenance, so some of our shuttles systems sit on kilometers. So they'll flag up in our CMMS, hey, I'm at 4,500 kilometers. You need to service me, like your Mercedes-Benz that you're driving now because you've been handed the keys. It gives you, hey, you need to service me very soon. Whereas some of the more, basic equipment, belt conveyors, they're on an interval-based schedule. And we measure that. And we measure the performance of our teams. And we measure planned versus completed maintenance, planned versus unplanned as well. And we make sure that there's a balance on site. We would never want to see a large amount of unplanned maintenance, because that means we're getting a lot of breakdowns, a lot of failure. So we want to keep to 80, 20, 90, 10 rule, where we can really ensure that our team is doing what we said we were going to do.
It seems like data then is a key part of this and tracking all of these things.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you've kind of hinted at this before, but I think I want to dig into a little bit further. How does the work that LTS team change over time? So like first 6 months versus a year, 5 years, 10 years, how does that sort of shift and change over time?
So I've recently just had this conversation with the customer, and we're heading into the 10th year of LTS being on site. And the customer, the first 2 or 3 years were horrid. It was a very, very difficult system. But through perseverance, teamwork, communication, working together, we've finally got a system that runs extremely well, especially at the times when they really need it. 80% of their volume globally comes through this building. They can't afford for this to shut down. So we got it going. We got it running. Runs nice and clean. 2 to 3 years. Should really be 1 year, but we struggled a little bit with this installation. Then we've entered just the last 5 years, and it's been business as usual. Good old-fashioned maintenance, usage-based maintenance, condition-based maintenance, and then at the same time, continuous improvement, top loss. One thing that we do is that when we do have a major breakdown, or because these things happen, we try and catch it up, but it does happen. We investigate. So anything over an hour and a half, 2 hours, or what we deem what we see fit from a customer perspective, we have a full root cause analysis document that the technician and the site engineering manager fills out, and it asks them questions on what they should do in the future. And then we modify maintenance plans, we modify spare parts, we modify our walk the floor routes of pre-checks of equipment. We modify, maybe it didn't show up in top loss, and we modify some of our processes that we use to fix the equipment. Once you pass that 5 years of bedding in, the equipment's now getting old. Not old in TGW terms, but it's been used a lot. 364 days a year, all year for 7 years.
That adds up.
Belts, pulleys, lift belts, subcomponents start needing changes. So what we're deploying for this customer example is we will do a full obsolescence report to look at any obsolete components, and we'll provide solutions for those obsolete components. And then at the same time, we'll analyze the system to look at the maintenance hotspots, and we'll put together refurbishment packages for the customer. The benefit of the on-site team is that all we have to do is look at the parts, because the on-site team will do the labor for you, for the customer. You've already paid for that labor. We've already got trained and skilled labor on site. So we don't need anybody else to come there. We just say what we need doing, call it job in a box, and we put it all together. That's what we need to do this area, this hotspot area that sees, 10,000 transfers a day. And then we work from there, and we identify the key points, and we sit down with the customer. We don't just do this solo and think, hey, this is what we're going to do. Hey, Mr. Customer, what do you think we should do? Where do you see the hotspots? What are your pain points in the system? It's 7 years old, but there's still things there that say, do you know what? We probably missed it in the design phase, and we're 7 years on now, and we still should have done this, And then at the same time, software moves on, and version control moves on, and slowly but surely over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see some of our installations within software obsolescence, and that's major heart surgery for the site. So we have to have those conversations with the customer 2 to 3 years in advance, knowing that because it's open heart surgery and it comes at a cost, and it can be extremely damaging from an operational perspective, we need to make sure we're all on the same page, and we can really, really plan this in as lean and as unrestrictive as possible to the customer, so that we can deploy it and give them the best results. Continuity of operations is extremely important.
So how often or how soon are you already talking about things like extensions or retrofits, replacements, software patches? Like, when do those conversations start to come up?
Well, I think the software patch is part of it. I have a lot of software management in my background. That conversation needs to be ongoing and happen on a regular basis. There are kind of two hats I like to talk about. There's the operator hat, where don't change anything ever. Just keep everything the same as it is until I want a new feature. And at that point, give me just that one little new feature on the same code base that I've been running forever. Well, that doesn't work very well if the code is 5 years old,
Sure.
especially if the code is 10 years old. There isn't anyone around anymore who's ever worked on that code. It's dangerous to try and build a new feature onto the old code, not because it's impossible to do or the act itself is dangerous, just because the software developer's familiarity is gone. They've been working on other things. They're more likely to make mistakes. And so it's important to try and have updates on a fairly regular basis so that when it does come time for the inevitable major upgrade, as Mike said, open heart surgery, that it's not as bad. It's not as challenging to try and plan for those changes because there will be changes. As far as the other parts, I lost the rest of the question. I don't remember.
IT patching's easy. You know, it's included in the remote support agreement, within the LTS agreement, and we just deliver IT patching from our remote support team. So all patching is usually included when we have a full on-site team on site, and we discuss timing of when we can do this with the customer. You know, some of it's on Saturday at 2 a.m. You know, which for our remote support team is now 7 a.m. Sunday morning. You know, but some of it's I think one of our customers is like 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
You know, so it varies from customer to customer, varies what IT infrastructure and hardware you have on site and how big the site is. But usually we take this into consideration when we talk and the preliminary conversations with the customer, and those questions arise. IT patching, IT security is a big topic, you know, huge topic. And how do we work with the customer as well to ensure both companies' IT security? And sometimes it's a fight of IT security policies, but we have to work together to overcome these hurdles. And as you talked about data, and we asked the question about data, we need access to the customer's IT infrastructure in some instances to get the most reliable data. If not, we're manually uploading it, and that can become a problem in itself due to accuracy and also due time. You can see the data. I like to log in on a Monday morning and see the results from all of our sites the last 7 days. That's what I really like to do. But if it's a manual upload site, usually I have to wait till Tuesday for it to upload because they upload the previous week all in one go. But it all depends on IT security.
You have to have the data in order to understand and plan for usage-based maintenance. If you don't know what the usage has been, then you're just guessing.
Right. And it seems like, you know, from all that you've said so far, that a big component of this is the trust and communication with the customer.
Yeah.
So how do you guys continue to build that so that we can have some of these tough conversations like, hey, your site's getting old, here's what you should consider? And how does consulting kind of play into that as well?
Well, we have to be partners. TGW is only as successful as our customers are. We're in business to help customers be more successful than they could possibly be without us. And if we're not just as interested in their success as they are, then it's a vendor-purchaser relationship, not a partnership relationship. And we work really hard to have a partnership relationship. And part of being partners is being clear and honest with each other and not having hidden agendas, not couching things, not saying what you think people want to hear, but politely and delicately saying the things that really need to be said. And if you know that the customer, the operations management, that, you know, the executive level, if you know they're going to be sensitive about something, certainly say that in a diplomatic way. But don't not say it because it's difficult. You've got to be honest and clear and upfront with each other. For example, if you know that there's an upcoming problem with an upcoming update of whatever type, that's a requirement for the new feature. So we talked about software a little bit before. When you're building a new feature, you build it on new software most often. If you know that new software has something that may affect them, you set that expectation up front. Say, look, this is something we need to pay extra attention to. And this is the risk if we do A, this is the risk if we do B. Let's choose together instead of just foisting those updates on and say, well, we hope that wouldn't happen, but sorry, it did.
Yeah.
So you really need to be clear and honest and have frank, trusting conversations with each other and expect both sides of the partnership to do that.
Mm-hmm. Anything you'd add to that one?
Service delivery and reliability.
Yeah.
First of all, the good base of a good, honest conversation is the reliability of the installation. If you're constantly hampered by issues within the system, it means that we're not doing our job correctly, or the job hasn't been done correctly, and we're fighting and fighting. So we have to deliver, and we have to be accountable when there's issues at hand, and being very frank and honest with the customer, saying, yeah, this was us, but we're going to fix it. And then you do fix it. And they're like, you said you said you were going to do this and you did it. And every time you complete one of those steps, you slowly but surely build a relationship of trust with the customer. And that's what you have to do. And once you've got that trust, you can then open up to each other a little bit more, and you can show each other's weaknesses, and then you complement each other and you work on it, and you know what the customer's weak at and what the customer's strong at, and you can try and help them develop that. And at the same time, the customer helps you. Strengthen your weak points and utilizes your best strengths. Because, as Jared said, it's a partnership. And there's always that old cliche of operations clashing with engineering, production is king, or queen. And, they always have the right of way when it comes to doing things. But it's having that relationship with the customer that enables you to have those complex and sometimes difficult conversations. If a piece of equipment, and this happens across every warehouse in the world, something will fail. Open ourselves up. Let's have that conversation. This failed because when we did this happened and we didn't foresee it. And we apologize. We've repaired it. We make ourselves accountable in the contract anyway, because we have a 98% availability guarantee, which comes with liquidated damages. So we take on the cost along with the customer. The customer also has their own costs when it comes to a breakdown. The people stood around not doing anything is the biggest one, or, the customer didn't receive their order.
Right.
So now they have customer complaints. So we have to be able to, first of all, we have to eliminate that. And I think we do a pretty good job, not just through the maintenance, but through the top loss. But also at the same time, we have to be able to have those conversations with the customer. And for example, if they say, no, you can't have the system, we run 24/7, 365 days a year, there's no time for maintenance. Well, it's going to fail. It's going to break. So how about we work together as a partnership and we move things around and we operate other areas of the site, or we operate here, and then we could do the maintenance, or we reconfigure shift patterns. We looked at some of the changes that can be made to installations, post go live, but also sometimes we need to modify our LTS agreements with the customer because the customer thought they were only going to run Monday to Friday. Now they're running Monday to Sunday. We didn't plan for that from a headcount perspective. We cater for it. We utilize our resources to ensure that we can provide continuity of operations, but short to medium to long term, it's just not feasible to maintain that. So we have to have those conversations, and we have to ensure that they give us the time to be able to provide them with the good service that they're paying for. And that's really important. But trust, delivery, and accountability, they are the things that you need to build with the customer. And sometimes it's not perfect. Sometimes it gets heated. But at least we can have those conversations.
Right.
We walk away after with a mutual respect because we're both trying to achieve the same goal, and that's ship boxes out the door.
Yeah. So to wrap up our conversation, 2 last questions for you. If you had to pick one thing, and no cheating, one thing, what's the most important thing a customer can do before go live to ensure long-term success?
I would say internal to their organization to have lots of conversations with all of the key players, all of the affected parties, to have as clear as possible of an understanding about their strengths, their weaknesses, their business goals, and how flexible they can be in different areas. Because what you need today is not going to be the same as what you need a year from now or 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And the more open and honest you are internally, the clearer of a picture and the stronger of a relationship you can have with any external company, especially our Lifetime Services organization, because needs are going to change. And when you have a strong internal set of relationships, you can have a strong with all of your partners, and less blame finding, more volunteering to be accountable as a group. And you trust that people are trying to do the right thing because you don't see someone trying to place blame or trying to evade blame.
Yeah.
Just open, honest, frequent, and frank communication.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say.
I agree with Jared completely.
Yeah.
Work in partnership with the integrator.
Yeah.
Get to know the system, work with the integrator, work with us, TGW, get to know the system inside and out, understand its weakness, understand its strength, understand what it can do, understand the functional design specification. Yeah. Learn it, build that knowledge. Because as much as we're deploying an engineering team to be able to maintain the system, there's that operational side of a system as well. And the customer needs to learn that. So they need to understand, the peaks and troughs, the flexibility of the system, how it works, how it operates, and what they can utilize it for. And the better the customer works with us in partnership, the better they'll get to know their system, and then the quicker the results will come from an automated solution.
Too often are the people that work out the functional design isolated from the people who will be running the system. And the folks who run the system don't know why it was designed this way, because the folks that worked on the design didn't tell them.
Yeah.
And so open and honest communication goes a long way.
And then the last one, what's one key thing a customer should think about for after go live as it relates to maintenance?
Do it. Do your maintenance.
Often.
Yeah.
Often. Regular. You can never do too much. Well, you can do too much maintenance, but never think, it can wait till tomorrow. Because the system will break. Things wear, things break. There's friction, there's moving components. It's not AI that's managing all this. There is actually nuts, bolts, bearings, belts. That
everything
go
has
with
a
it.
life.
Yeah.
Everything has a life expectancy. So do the maintenance. Be proactive about it. Plan it in. Operations and engineering should always work together, never against each other, fighting for automation space. It's do your maintenance.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you both for taking the time to talk about how to really ensure that long-term success for your automation. How would you like people to reach out to you if they would like to know more about our Lifetime Services team?
I can reach out to me directly or on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find, and I'd love to help out any way that I can.
Awesome. Well, thank you both again for your time, and thank you listeners for tuning in to this episode of the Automation Journey. Stay tuned for more episodes where we talk about some of the different considerations, challenges, and questions you might face along the way in your journey.